All right, everybody. Welcome to the Three Geeks podcast. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great.
We are here with Mr. Bruce Vilanch. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm grand. I'm with geeks, three geeks, so I'm a triple nerd.
It's perfect.
I like that shirt. I like that shirt a lot.
Thank you. That's good because I have to get into exact position for StreamYard. Figure out what I'm doing. I'm wonderful. How's life out there?
Good. So I was reading up on you on IMDb, and it looks like you went to Ohio State.
Guilty. I was at the big farm. I was a Buckeye. I was there 5 years actually, and I got 2 degrees of theater and journalism. Now, who's
Nice.
behind us? Do you hear that? That
The
is
echo?
that Dr. Feedback?
Yeah, there's some echo. I don't know where it's
Is that
coming
echo?
from.
I guess it is echo. Okay. Hello.
I'm not here. Is it any
Not
better now?
kidding.
Is it me?
That's fine with me. I mean, I think it'll be annoying everybody who's watching, but
I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, I don't
I
hear
mean,
it.
we all just mute ourselves one at a time.
Yeah, there you go.
Not you, Bruce. You're probably good.
no, please. I have no depth. I'm as shallow as I come. Well, that got quieter.
So, Bruce, you've been
Yeah.
pretty much you've done it all in Hollywood. But one of the
I
things,
have. That's because I learned in Columbus. Of that kind. It was when I was there. When
We
I was there was no short north. The short north was what your life was if you walked down that street, High Street. At that, and now it's all, it's all very gentrified and gay, and all the coffee shops are now patisseries. So it's all different. And German Village was like the hip enclave. But
Yeah.
now it's all over the place. Now it's a metropolis. Thank
I
you.
saw a woman
Nationwide.
get hit by a car trying to cross the street in the short north once.
Yeah, really? Yeah. It's tough. Well,
Yeah.
listen, now you have a hockey team. You're the real deal.
Yeah.
OSU Ohio State was the only major league team, basically, in Columbus when I was there.
that's
So
how
was
it is now,
a
really.
very big deal.
But,
Anyway,
so I want to talk to you about the Star Wars Holiday Special. But before we get into that, you worked on the Brady Bunch Variety Hour.
yes, guilty of that as well.
Oh.
I'm writing a book about how I worked the worst television shows in history and lived. Star Wars is one, and Brady Bunch is another. Absolutely.
What was the
shortly
experience
after I got
like in the
out.
time?
I'm sorry?
What was the experience like at the time working on the Brady Bunch Variety Hour?
Well, when they said we'd like you to write for the Brady Bunch, I said, write the Brady Bunch? That's not the verb I had in mind with the Brady Bunch. But it was because I'd come out here and I had done a very hip show with a group called the Manhattan Transfer. And it was a summer variety show. And I've been writing for a lot of people from Chicago, where I was writing for the Chicago Tribune. And I came out here to do that, and I there was a lot of variety television in those. It was the last gasp of variety TV. There was Carol Burnett, and there was Dean Martin, and there were all these different shows. And I wound up writing Donnie and Marie. And from Donnie and Marie the Brady Bunch sprang forth from the brain trust that gave you Donnie and Marie. And so I did that. And at the time, we had a lot of fun. I mean, but you have to understand, it was 1976, 77, so we were all chemically altered. And had we known what we were doing and that we'd be talking about it 40 years later, we would have paid closer attention.
I didn't even know this was.
We were too busy having a good time, and it was a lot of fun doing it. And we knew, as with the Star Wars show, we knew that what we were doing was ridiculous, but it was the norm. I mean, there were these network variety shows, and one was more more insane than the other. Some of them were very classy. These were not the ones I was working on occasionally, but a lot of them were just sort of a showcase for various performers. And the weirder the concept, the better, because the idea was to get the audience there for one night only, and to win the time slot that week on that night. And that was what network TV was like before the 500 channel universe, and then onward to podcasts and everything else. Back then, it was just the big three. Fox wasn't even around. It was if you could win the night, if you could win the time slot that night, you were a hero.
How long did the Brady Bunch Variety Hour last? Because I didn't know it was a show until I got my daughter the Brady Bunch box set, and it was in there.
Go no. Well, that's something we owe to the internet. Initially, we only did 9 of them.
Okay.
Because it was on what was called a wheel, which was every week. There were 3 shows, and we shared the time slot. And we were on one week, and then the next week would be the Hardy Boys with Parker Stevenson and Sean Cassidy. And then the following week would be Nancy Drew with Pamela Sue Martin, Girl Detective. And it would be one of the 3. And eventually, after, between the 3 shows, that was 27 weeks. That was, half of the year, and the reruns. But we only had to do 9. And after that, they just bumped us, Nancy Drew and us, the 2 of us. We were voted off the island, and the Hardy Boys continued. And the Brady Bunch. See, the Brady Bunch has never gone away. The initial show had been off the air already for years, but it was never off the air in reruns. And so there have been all these iterations of it. Ours was just one of them. There was the Brady Kids and the Brady Brides, and then there were the Brady Bunch movies, which were parodies of the Brady Bunch. But they were hits, and as a result, all the old shows wound up on Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
Paramount just saw a revenue stream. So suddenly there was our show, which had not been seen for 30 years, was suddenly on the air, and I was getting calls from people, saying, "Dude, I just saw a show that has your name on it, and it's the guy from the dad from the Brady's, and he's in Carmen Miranda drag. Well, am I dreaming?" I said, "No, you're on the same stuff that we were on when we made the show." I can see your bong from here. So it's never gone away. It's always kind of been just when we thought it was dead and buried, it came back on the internet. Of course, and after the Brady Bunch movies, then the internet exploded. So again, it doesn't stop.
So transitioning to the Star Wars Holiday Special, I know Max and Scott got questions for you, but my question for you about this is, whose idea was it to give B. Arthur a 10-minute solo?
Mine. Actually, it was. Well, in a manner of speaking, the only way we could get B on the show was if she could sing, because she was Maude at the time, and Maude was a big show. Maude was spun off of All in the Family, and I think she was Archie Bunker's liberal cousin. And she had a show; it was a big hit, and everybody wanted her. And we were on CBS, and they particularly wanted us to use her because it would cross promote. They would then put Maude promos in the commercial spots. And B came from Broadway, and she had been in the original Fiddler on the Roof. She was the original Yenta the Matchmaker, and she was in the original production of Mame with Angela Lansbury singing Bosom Buddies, and she'd won Tony Awards, but she didn't get to sing on TV, and she didn't get to sing as Maude. So she said, "Yeah, I'll do it if I can do a number." So, and then we concocted this thing for her, who she would be. That while the Millennium Falcon was on its way back to the Wookiee planet, so that Chewbacca could be there for Life Day, which was a holiday George invented, thinking it would be like Festivus for the rest of us. Not so much. And they would make a fuel stop. Well, they were being chased by Imperial stormtroopers, and so they had to make a decoy stop on Tatooine. And Tatooine, of course, is that's the cantina. And we added a boss lady at the cantina, and it was B. in her Statue of Liberty period.
Just a quick note: that music is called jizz music.
It certainly is. Who am I to argue with that?
True story. Check the Wikipedia.
They took Trader Jose off the shelves and Trader Ming off the shelves, and I said, "And where's Trader Jizz?" my favorite product is Trader. Anyway, so B, jizz music. Wow. So far from the jizz that we know and love. Anyway, B insisted on, so B was the boss lady, and originally we thought she would do some kind of silly Disney kind of number, but she wanted to do something very, very serious. And she brought us a song by Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill, the Alabama song, which Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention did. So a lot of people knew it at the time. Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask. Very, very Weimar Republic. And it ends with, I tell you I will die. I tell you I will die. So it's an up tune. And we thought, I don't know, this is really not, really want to do it? She said, it's my Weill Brecht favorite. I said, it really is Weill Brecht is what it is. And then, of course, it turns out the Bertolt Brecht estate had to clear it. And they were not interested in having Maud sing a Bertolt Brecht song on the Star Wars show. So I don't know why not. God knows they
missed out. Yeah, that's a missed opportunity.
Big old missed opportunity
to go into the account. So Ken and Mitzi Welch, who wrote a lot of Carol Burnett's musical parodies, were on board, and they wrote B a song very much like the Alabama, and a little bit like "Those Were the Days, My Friend. We thought they'd never end." It was like that. So it was kind of jolly and serious at the same time. And so that is how that song happened. And I had a hand in all of that. Because I was the musical comedy queen on the show. So I knew all of that stuff.
Who had the idea for Grandpa Itchy's masturbation chair?
George. George's original story was the Wookiees were the lead characters in this. He had one story that he had told. He had 10 stories, and he had said he would make 6 movies, and then he sold the other 4 original stories into various formats. And he had one story left, and basically, he couldn't sell Boba Fett. If you're a Star Wars people, I don't know. But Boba Fett was what he really wanted to do, and they wouldn't do it, and they wouldn't do a feature-length animation, as I recall. So he had a short of Boba Fett to introduce the character, and this was to be inserted in this other story he had about the Wookiees. And one of the things the Wookiees had were something very prescient. They had virtual reality helmets, and you put this thing on, and it piped into your brain, and your fantasy came to life. So Grandpa's fantasy, the silverback Wookiee, whose name I can never remember, and he was Mala, and the kid was Itchy, and I can never remember who. Do you remember who Grandpa was? I
thought Grandpa was Itchy. It's so hard to watch.
He was Itchy. Right.
Is it Lumpy?
Lumpy. The kid was Lumpy, and so Itchy. Okay. His fantasy was going to be Cher. But at the last minute, she couldn't do it. And so Diane Carroll stepped in. And it was, he had this sort of masturbatory fantasy. But I'd like to point out it was the first interracial, interspecies relationship on network television. Where is my NAACP Image Award I had?
For real. No, we need to... We need to definitely get
after Diane Carroll. I mean, really. She got a big kick out of it, though. And she got all sexed up, but she was such a classy actress. She never got to play all the sexy stuff. She never got to wear, Bob Mackie, all that kind of stuff. So she was she had a party doing it.
I mean, like I get the theory behind the masturbation chair, but I wouldn't put it in the middle of my living room. That's where I see the problem.
Well, I haven't looked at it in a long time. I mean, it seems to me that wasn't the first thing you noticed. I mean, I think it was kind of subtle. I mean, you had to figure out what was going on. But, I mean, I'll say people keep saying, "How did that happen?" And it's because I don't ever believe that George felt. I think George thought that he was going to sell them this story, and it would be turned into an original musical. And I don't think he ever thought it was going to be a variety special, the way it was with guest stars and sketches and things. I think if he had known that, he probably wouldn't have sold it. I don't know. It was a tactical move on his part because uh, Star Wars had been out for 18 months and was just starting to shoot The Empire, and he wanted to keep stirring the pot because he knew The Empire's release was a year away. So he wanted to keep it current. And, that was what you did. There was no social media. That was what you did to keep things on the bubble. You did various stunt things over the course of time to make sure the audience was aware of what was coming.
I just the holiday special is infamous now, and I just watched an episode of the Goldbergs where the younger kid gets a bootleg copy of the Star Wars holiday special, and he's so excited. He runs home, he pops it in, and then he like questions his whole existence and his fandom because he's like, I don't like this. Does that mean I don't like Star Wars anymore?
Exactly.
It was great. Like
well, I mean, the writers of the Goldbergs know, they know all about it. Because what happened was it went away, and there were two other movies, and then in the course of time before the internet, by the time the internet came in, there was a generation of kids who had seen the Star Wars movies on VHS, and then the internet came in, and they found this thing, and by that time, Star Wars was a religion, and so they looked at this and they said, George, how could you do this to us? How could you betray us in this way? And so that was when George started saying, I want to buy up every copy and I want to burn them. And then it kind of, the tide went out again. And then the other three movies happened. And with each succeeding Star Wars movie, and not just those three, but Rebel One and Solo and Mandalorian and anything in the universe that comes out, bang, somebody else talks about the Star Wars. It comes back. It won't go away. You can't beat it with a lightsaber.
No. It is immortalized in Star Wars history.
I mean, yeah, now we all own it now. But I love that they keep making. Well, the Goldbergs are set in like the '80s.
Yeah,
it's like that '80s show. So full of that is a pop culture reference from the '80s that everybody gets.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that the show has a ridiculously prolonged existence.
I think Earth Day made it into actual Star Wars canon, or Life Day. I mean, not Earth Day. Life Day made it into actual Star Wars canon.
It's in the Mandalorian.
So because, this week they announced the Star Wars Lego holiday special.
I saw that.
It's not a joke. It's Lego and it's Lucasfilm and Lego for Disney, and they are celebrating Life Day on it. It is built around the holiday is Life Day. When we did it, I mean that nobody knew what the holiday was. We aired Thanksgiving weekend, so it was the implication was this is for the Thanksgiving holiday, and because Life Day he has to get home for it. It was just like everybody else who has to get home for Thanksgiving. So it had a double meaning, but nobody knew about the holiday we were referring to. They assumed it was Thanksgiving. Now, all the Star Wars bots, crazies, and all that now have they can genuinely celebrate this holiday. They can go be druids. So they can.
I've been waiting so long.
Another attack on Stonehenge.
I've been waiting so long to be able to celebrate Life Day that I was just it was a
and sing the Life Day song, which nobody remembers. I think George wrote. I think he had a hand in writing it.
Oh man!
But it was nothing. I remember Carrie wanted to do a number on the show, and she wound up. I think she just wound up doing the Life Day song. I think, and Harrison didn't want to learn it, and Mark learned it, and I mean, I forget, but it was carried by the creatures. Carrie wanted to sing a Joni Mitchell song, which was hysterical. And Joni did not see. She was with Bertolt Brecht. She didn't see her song being on the Star Wars show.
But the Star Wars Christmas special is awesome. But you've done some work that's less controversial. But you wrote for Comic Relief. You got to work with like Whoopi Goldberg and Billy Crystal and all these greats. What are some of your experiences with them? And how was that for you?
Well, it started because it started thanks to Ronald Reagan, because he cut all the welfare programs and mental health programs, and suddenly there were all these. We didn't have a homeless problem until Reagan, until he changed the economic system, and all the people who were in shelters were forced out of them, and they were on the street. And nobody was doing anything about it. It was a Republican administration, and they weren't interested. And so the comics got together and said, we have to do something about it. And HBO, fortunately, was at the time looking for some kind of a show to make their signature, aside from the series that they were running. And so they were very simpatico, and they underwrote it. And Whoopi and Robin and Billy did it, and we did 12 of them. But towards the end, there was a lot of fatigue. The homeless problem didn't get better. We were giving away a lot of money, and it wasn't getting any better. So the last one we did was for Katrina, the hurricane in New Orleans, and we stopped doing it. But and it was great fun because all these comics were there, and I wasn't. I mean, I wrote for the three hosts when they were there together, because they had to do things together and do pitches together to get people. It was a telethon, and I wrote a lot of stuff for other non-comics to come on to talk about. Also, everything was a pitch. Everything was to get you to pick up the phone and give money. So I mean, the only thing I can think of is. I haven't thought about it much, but we wanted Don Rickles, and HBO said, "Oh my God, oh no, and even the people running Comic Relief said, "Oh no, we can't. He'll insult everybody, and he'll do all this racist material and all that stuff." And it's just like it's not. It goes beyond racist. I mean, he just makes fun of anybody, of everybody, and whatever is like convenient. So we sat down with him and we had a talk, and he said, "Could you really kind of pull it in a little bit?" So, because he never used any bad words, he just, it was clear that what he meant. And so he said, "Yeah, absolutely, sure." And he came out, and there was an Asian guy sitting in the front row, and he was out for about 2 minutes. And he looked at the guy and he said, "I ran from your uncle on an island in Guam." And it began, and it got a huge laugh. It got a shock laugh, and then all the stuff came out. Any guy with a beard was, "Hey, Rabbi," it was like, and they were in back, kind of going, "Oh, no one's going to give any money now," but it was okay. It was a touch of old school.
I want to go back just a little bit because I see on your IMDb that you were involved with a special, John Ritter being of sound mind and body.
Oh yeah, I love that. Was a good one.
John Ritter is one of my favorite television actors of all time. What was that like? What was it about? Like, what was it?
He was the star of Three's Company, which is a gigantic hit, and ABC, as part of his deal, gave him a special because he wanted to do something other than Three's Company. And so the whole idea was he was not of sound mind. That it was a series of sketches in which he played one crazy character after another, or a kind of the basic John Ritter character, which is the kind of good-looking white guy who, but not flamboyant, not outrageous. I mean, conservative guy who gets put into ridiculous situations. I can't remember actually, but we had one with like a practical joke thing where his friends had hired these gorgeous hookers to come on to him and all that. He couldn't understand how that was, and it played to John, doing all those things like this can't be happening to me. And I wish I could remember it because that one, see, unlike the Brady Bunch of Star Wars, the internet never seized on that. And of course, tragically, John died young. And unlike James Dean or Marilyn Monroe, there isn't a cult built around him, or otherwise it would still be here. So I'd have to look at it again, and then I could get the chapter reversed. But it's one of my favorite shows. I really did like it, and it got a huge rating, so it was popular at the time. We didn't get anything at the Emmys. But,
my mom,
the other benchmark.
My mom always tells me, I remember where I was when JFK died. I remember where I was when Lennon died. I don't have much of those, but I remember where I was when John Ritter died. Because
really?
he, no joke, was my favorite time. I watched 8 Simple Rules. Me and my friend Amit in high school, we were both like mourning the death of this TV legend because it's just so shocking because we were both fans of that show, and he was, only in his 50s? It's crazy.
Something like that. It was a heart thing that hadn't been detected, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly. But it was awful because he was the greatest. And his son, Jason Ritter, is a very good actor who looks a lot like him.
Mm-hmm.
And is really talented and is the sweetest guy. Yeah. Lovely, lovely guy.
So, Scott, you wanted to talk about his music career?
My music career? Okay.
Yeah, so I am, and that's actually an excellent segue. You co-wrote a Village People song, "Sex Over the Phone."
Sex Over the Phone. I did an album for the Village People, and it was the later Village People. Although I met them because I wrote the first draft of "Can't Stop the Music," which may or may not be on the IMDb. But I quit after the first draft because I knew it was going to get ridiculous, and they kept the producer, who was a fabulous lunatic, kept on having me rewrite it for the leading woman part, which was originally written for Olivia Newton-John, and that would have been funny. The contrast between Olivia Newton-John and the Village People was what actually kind of hooked me into it, the idea. And then she didn't want to do it, and nobody wanted to do it. Valerie Perrine wanted to do it, and because at that point she wasn't getting what she wanted, she wasn't getting cast in things she wanted, and there was no contrast between the two. But that was only one of the many things about the picture that was insane and ridiculous. However, I did meet Jacques Morali, who created the Village People, and after a while, at a couple of years or so after the picture was released, he called me. He was French, and he said, "Daddy, I think you are a lyricist." He wanted me to write lyrics for his songs. He had written all the Village People songs, and but he wanted me to write a lyric to a song for Eartha Kitt. You know Eartha Kitt?
Yeah,
Darling.
Yeah, darling. A lot of people know her like from Batman and Emperor's New Clothes and the Eddie Murphy picture, Boomerang, I think. But she was a big star, and she was Catwoman. She was one of the Catwoman, and she talked like this. I want a man who is very, very rich and famous. And so there was a review in Paris called The Crazy Horse, which was a topless review. And all these gorgeous girls with their tits hanging out would sing. They would lip sync to other famous people singing, not doing impressions, but just for no reason. It was nuts. And he had a song of mine for Earth. It was called "Where Is My Man," and he sent me the track, and I wrote the lyric to the track. And then Eartha recorded it, and it was in the show in Paris for years. Usually, some 7-foot-tall blonde girl with huge jugs came out and sang it as Eartha Kitt. So the audience would kind of go, huh? But after that, it was released as a single, as it was a huge disco hit all over the world, except in America where they didn't play disco. So in America, it was, you should pardon the expression, a 12-inch, which was a record that DJs played, and which was actually how they started, doing the hip hop stuff with the whatever they call that. Is that jizz also?
It probably could be.
Not officially. Not officially.
They were working with 12-inch records. They were working with LPs at the beginning. And so as a result of that, Jacques called and said he was going to do one more Village People album. And he wanted me to write all the songs on it with him. So I wrote all the songs, and Sex Over the Phone was one of them. And it was huge in England. It was banned by the BBC. Radio 1 couldn't play it. And, it didn't get airplay over here because at that point, the Village People were like poison. So, but in places like Australia, where disco was still happening, it got a lot of airplay. And it was, in England, it was scandalous, which is always a good thing to be in England because, they are as repressed as they can be, and so anything that is like, and in Japan, because it's such a conformist society where they all dress alike and they work for a company all their life, and so anything outrageous they love. I mean, that's why they loved Michael Jackson, they love Madonna, anybody who's like looks crazy different. Like that's why they like Godzilla. I mean, because he's huge. It doesn't look like anybody else. Godzilla. The Japanese are like, all my favorite horror monster movies are Japanese ones, where the atom bomb mutations come out of the Sea of Japan, and they take out a city. In every single one of them, one's got a giant moth with two little girls singing to him.
Mothra, yeah. Mothra's the best.
Mothra, yeah.
Like they're on their way to Catholic school.
No, I'm just impressed with the people who rebuild the city every time. Because, I mean, like, he levels all of Tokyo, and then they just put it all back so he can level it again.
I know. Well, we did the same thing, I'd like to point out. Only we used Erica.
That's where he came from.
So much of it was paper. I mean, it was like, that every time Japan, after the war, Japan rebuilt, but they rebuilt it to look like Cleveland. And when you go to Japan now, like, then you'll go for miles and see buildings, and then there'll be something that looks Japanese, traditional Japanese with like sliding doors and paper, and you go, oh my God, I'm in Japan. Suddenly, it brings you back to what it was like before it went Western. So anyway, yes, that's how Sex Over the Phone happened, and Sex Over the Phone, it was there. I mean, for younger people, there was a lot of sex over the phone. I mean, there wasn't sexting in those days because there wasn't.
Right.
But you could call, like 1-800-PUSSY, and some housewife in New Orleans would answer and talk dirty to you while she did her ironing. And it was a way women supplemented their income. They just I think Spike Lee made a movie about it. I think it's called Girl 6.
Yep.
It's about an operation like that. Jennifer Lewis, who's a great friend of mine, before she became Blackish, before she got huge, when she was Jennifer Lewis from St. Louis, plays the woman who runs the operation in the Spike Lee movie.
So I'm a huge fan of award shows. What is that like, being involved with the award shows?
Well, the Oscars are I've done it 23 times officially, and a lot of other times unofficially. It's that's like the Super Bowl of what I do. It's live, and people who don't go to the movies watch it. People who don't watch television watch it because it's an event. It's a cultural event, and so when you do that one, you're aware that everything that's being said is really being looked at. So there's a great nervousness about how is it all going to play. Award shows generally, pardon me, are most of them now are parades of stars. They give 1 million acting awards because that's how you get stars on stage. The Oscar show, unfortunately, only gets 4 acting awards, and so you have to hope that there are famous people nominated in the other categories, or you have to load up the presenters. You wind up getting a lot of presenters who are, pardon me, they're not stage actors. They're not concert draws. They're movie actors, and they have no character to play, and they haven't got a persona that you can write to particularly. I mean, who was Michelle Pfeiffer when she gets on stage? Well, she's gorgeous and elegant, and you can write that. I mean, that's what you have to do. But it ain't too funny unless you find some little twist that you can make work. Um, sometimes you have disastrous results. I had with Keanu Reeves when I thought, oh, it'd be fun for him to do it in his Bill and Ted character. And of course, he may be Bill. If he's Bill, then Ted wasn't there. But it was doing it by himself, and he was very game, and it just wasn't going to. I regret it to this day. I every time I see him, I write him a check. It's a check. Fortunately, I haven't seen him too much, but. And I didn't steal his dog, which,
Yeah, I mean, I think he's doing all right as long as you leave his dog alone.
Leave my dog
he's
alone.
Cool.
He's actually a real gent, but it's interesting. Some people like Johnny Depp, when he started out, there was no Johnny Depp character. He was so when he would get up there, he would like flumfer around, and then he went and he created a Johnny Depp persona that he does on talk shows. He's like, I'm the hippest person in the room, right? He's wearing something hip. He's got some weird thing, some kind of strange jewelry. He's doing something and talking obliquely about things, and that is his talk show persona. And so you can use that when he's up, if he has to give an award or something. But yeah, it's just very difficult. Everybody isn't Brad Pitt. He's so comfortable with himself that, and I'd be comfortable with him too. I'd like to point out, if I got a shot. He just can get up there and just he's aware of who he is, and so he can kind of make fun of himself, and that makes it kind of easy. But they're great fun to do because they're partially like big parties. I mean, everybody is there they're there under duress. They're there because they might win, they might lose. They have to make an appearance. They're all dressed up. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They haven't eaten. They don't want to drink. So it's tiresome for a lot of them. But they see a lot of people they know, and it still is amazing. Everybody works in their own little vacuum, and these events are where they kind of see each other. And when I used to talk to old movie stars who are now long gone, who were in the studio period, I would say, well, do you know so-and-so? And they would say, no, she was at Warner Brothers. I was at Metro. We never saw them. Occasionally, I ran into her once in a restaurant. It was like that. It was like there was a certain kind of clubbiness, but not for everybody.
Well, do you have a favorite host for the Oscars?
It's hard to say because they're all friends of mine. I mean, Billy Crystal was like a show of his own. I mean, between the monologue and the medley of songs and the film package, yeah, he delivered a whole show in the first 20 minutes, and then kept firing as he went along. And Whoopi, I did 4 shows with, and she's a whole other thing. I mean, I love them all. Steve Martin is, to me, the most interesting because he is a movie star, but he has a very strange, oddball point of view about the whole thing that made his take on it, just somewhat more interesting because he never feels like he's a part of it all. And Letterman tried that, except that Letterman, it didn't work because it wasn't his show. Steve is also mindful of the event nature of it, and he's a movie star, so there's right away there's acceptance that he knows what this business is. He knows who the art directors are and who the sound editors are. That's what the Oscar show is. It's full of people who are nerds, people who do all the behind the scenes stuff, the below the line. Even that expression, it's below the line. That's anything that isn't a producer, director, writer, actor is below the line. Cameraman below the line. It's like the people who execute the ideas of the other people and the stars.
Yeah, I've enjoyed pretty much everybody who's hosted the Oscars, I think. I don't really have a negative thing to say. I know that Seth MacFarlane got a lot of crap when he hosted, but I thought he did great.
Well, it was a certain, I wouldn't have done "Show Us Your Boobs," but
Yeah,
we
probably.
saw your boobs, whatever. I don't know, but then the world is changing, I suppose.
So I want to talk to you about Hollywood Squares, which unfortunately Hollywood Squares isn't on right now, which is crazy to think because they've rebooted the Match Game and Card Sharks and Family Feud.
They could do a Zoom version of Hollywood Squares, like
they could.
I've done a million podcast benefits that are all Hollywood Squares. They really are. They do it because it lends itself to that format. I mean, it looks like a tic-tac-toe board. There is a show, Hip Hop Squares, which is on VH1, which is actually owned by the original Hollywood Squares people, and it is all rappers because they're so funny. I mean, it's like Flavor Flav and everybody else. He's funny. Everybody else is. And they use old material. They use the old set, the last set from the Whoopi iteration that I was on. They use jokes from that. They use and questions from that. So, and it's been on a few years. So nothing will happen until that goes away. Nobody knows it's on, but it's there. I mean, maybe there's a small cell of Hollywood Squares watchers who faithfully follow every week to see what Mary J. Blige will say. I know.
I'm terribly interested in what Mary J. Blige has to say.
I've worked great. See, I did a Tony Awards with Mary J. Blige, and I don't know why she was on it. She sang something, but there was a reason. She was thinking about doing a musical on Broadway, but then she was nominated for an Oscar. So she's the real deal. I've had a brilliant quote. Oh, I know. The other thing about all those other shows is whenever they tried to reboot them in the past, they bombed. There were versions of Match Game, To Tell the Truth, Card Shark, that all came back in syndication and didn't work. This is the first time they've worked. When they put them on prime time with stars in this era of reality television, it's a cheaper way to program. And so you have Alec Baldwin and Anthony Anderson and Elizabeth Banks and people like that hosting them. So they become star things. And then Jane Lynch has her thing, the
Hollywood Game Night.
Which really, it's because it really is. It's cheaper than programming a lot of stuff, and it keeps everything afloat. Now, of course, in these times of COVID, everything is shut down. So there's no. Instead of original programming, they can go back into the vault and pull up some of these shows from a year or so ago, and they still work. But my point is that Hollywood Squares was always a hit. It never went away. It was on for 14 years, from 1967 to like 1979. And then it took a hiatus and came back with Joan Rivers for 5 years, and took another hiatus and came back with Whoopi for 6 years. So it's never really gone away. And that's the reason why they haven't brought it back so fast, other than the hip hop. Because it doesn't feel new, because it's never gone away. Those other shows, a lot of people never heard of any of those shows. They've been trying to reboot I've Got a Secret for the longest time, but I think they're scared of what secrets people must have. What secrets are left after the Real Housewives?
No, it's like I've Got a Secret is just like Me Too, the pre-trial something there.
Refreshing, and I'm not being paid to plug it.
What's funny is we interviewed Scott Schwartz on Saturday, and he was drinking a Diet Snapple too. The exact same one.
Very popular way to have tea. Tea and carcinogens. I'm sure. I mean, how do they make it sweet? It's not sugar. What is it?
Well, you weren't just a writer. You've been in a bunch of stuff too. How was your experience on Don't Mess with the Zohan?
It was fabulous. I got paid a lot of money. It was one day. It was Adam Sandler wanted a different ending on the movie, and he had an idea. He had Dave Matthews as the villain, as the white supremacist, crazy racist villain, and he thought it'd be funny if his bomb exploded and he was blown into the apartment of two gay guys in the village. So there was a lot of stuff in the movie, a lot, because he was a hairdresser, but he was like a ridiculously straight Israeli hairdresser. And there's a lot of gay jokes. And Alec Mapa was the other hairdresser who was, a queen floating off the floor. And so we thought, let's have these, he interrupts his tender domestic scene. And so we shot it, and he blows up, and he lands on the couch between me and George Takei, my husband. Nice. We're an old couple, and I was very heavy. I was at my head. I was huge. I mean, I said they could float me as the Pamela Anderson balloon in the Mason. I was gigantic. And he lands, and for some reason he has a cage full of beagle puppies with him. I don't know what that. I think there's some formula. I don't know. I don't remember. But and so it was a great day. We shot it. Adam was on the next stage making another movie, a picture called Bedtime Stories, and he'd broken his ankle or something, so they were wheeling him around. Saying they wheeled him over to see us, but I had a wonderful time, and the movie's very funny, and Leni Kazan gets to show her tuchus, which is immense. But not the first time she's done that. She did a picture with Divine, a picture called Lust in the Dust, where they're sisters who were separated at birth, but each one has half of the map to the treasure on one of the butt cheeks. And so they don't know this until they're all together, and they go, "Oh my God!" And they put them together, and they figure out the map.
So they're born. The tattoo artist puts the map. He's got to like line them up, right, to tattoo them, and then they separate them forever.
Yeah, I think that was how it was done. One had it on her left cheek, the other one had it on her right cheek.
Right.
Reminds me of an old joke, but I just won't go into it now.
Dan, one of our podcasting partners, would be upset if I didn't take the time to ask you about the Ice Pirates.
Oh, well, thank you, Anne. It's so sweet. Well, that was I was brought in to do a rewrite on that movie, a polish, they call it. And it was, we never thought it would actually get done. But then the studio head left. He was fired, and the producer of the movie became the studio head. So he gave the picture a green light because it was his production, and also because the studio is MGM, and they have a television division, and they had a deal with Robert Urich, who was the star of the thing, who had a show called Vegas that was a big hit, and he had in his contract that he could make features for them. So this was the way they could pay off this obligation. And so we made the picture under the strict understanding that we were on a particular budget that we couldn't go over. And the first thing that happened was when the picture actually got greenlit, little Paul Williams, the songwriter actor, quit. And the director said, "You can play this part," which was the evil emperor, Weird Wendon, who's a gambler and who has gambled away his body and is now exists as a head that gets put on different bodies. So that's when I put in the line, "I'm famous for my head," as I went around the universe. And we shot the thing like in a minute, but it looked great. In fact, the sets looked so good that they kept some of them up and used them in Spaceballs, which was Mel Brooks's intergalactic comedy. And we were kind of intergalactic comedy adventure somewhere with a very odd cast. And it was the second movie made by Angelica Houston. She had made one other picture with her father in Europe, and then made this, and then auditioned for Prizzi's Honor, which she got, and she won the Oscar. So, as a result, for several years, whenever there was the Angelica Houston night, they would have to show the Ice Pirates because she didn't have that many movies. So it lived beyond its shelf life because of her. And then John Matuzak, the football player, was in it, and he died a tragic death. And so it came back. There was, and then of course, I think we did it in '83, and then the internet came in, and it became a great favorite of people, especially younger people, because it was crazy. I mean, we had a space herpy. That was one of our monsters.
That's fantastic.
I think Rick and Morty tells us there's a space everything, so that makes total sense.
I had a great. Again, we had a great time doing it. It was, I mean, because we knew we were doing something very silly, but at the same time, it was an adventure, and it was obviously spawned by Star Wars and that whole intergalactic thing. But I mean, the idea that these were there was the galaxy was dry, and everybody wanted ice, and these were pirates who would hijack a ship full of ice and sell it to a different planet.
Do you prefer like sillier projects or like that, where you can kind of hang a little bit looser and have a little more fun, or do you like or do you just like any work, or do you prefer more serious?
Well, nobody comes to me and says, "We want you to write a mafia movie." But, I mean, once you are pigeonholed, but I don't like that expression particularly, because it's like you do it to yourself. I enjoy doing comedies, and I'm known for that. But I could do dramas too. I'm not inclined to write that kind of stuff. I'm inclined to write funny stuff, because I guess that's my worldview. But I mean, one of the reasons Woody Allen is so interesting is that he does them both, and does them both so well. I mean, he doesn't take himself too seriously. He does it very well. And that's unusual. Billy Wilder was somebody in the golden age who could write and direct Some Like It Hot, and also write and direct Double Indemnity, which is like a deep noir thriller, or Sunset Boulevard, which was originally a comedy and got darker as they did it. They wrote it for Mae West, who said she wasn't going to do it. Who's going to believe that I have to go pay for it?
It's not that you have to. It's just that you
no. Going to believe it? I'm living in a house alone and have to guy. Who's going to believe that?
Scott, did you have any questions left?
Who, me?
Oh, no, Scott.
He got every. He pretty much.
Who's Les? Oh, Les.
I want to say thank you so much, Bruce, for coming on.
Everything I wanted to know about, you got to.
Okay.
Well, I feel I covered it rather thoroughly.
Bruce, I like that you wore a triple nerd shirt on the Three Geeks podcast. That is fantastic.
Exactly. Well, it's. I used to play Scrabble. I was but the people I played with were too serious. There's a 3-letter word for a Spanish bridal veil that they always would use. And it's got like 2 X's and a Z in it, something like that. And you always land on triple word score, and suddenly they're 58 points ahead of you. And I thought, oh, please.
I have a friend like that who takes the game way too serious, and you're like, look, like we're not English, we're not scholars here. We're just trying to have some fun, and yeah, they're gonna get a 75-point score, use up all their tiles, and just be like, oh, how come you're not having fun?
These guys, they play with a dictionary.
Yeah,
because they keep throwing words in that no one knows. Yeah. They have to prove to you that this is a word. But you know what? I didn't. I came for the sex. I didn't.
Right.
Earlier, you mentioned that you were writing a book. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
It's a book about a lot of this stuff, about how I wrote these awful television shows, and more stories behind them. Basically, I can't give everything away. So I think that's what it's going to be. It's taking shape now. I didn't want to write, a memoir about all of these things, because a lot of them are about people who people don't really care about anymore. I didn't want to write a memoir, like a sexual memoir. There was 20 years ago, there was a documentary made about me called Get Bruce, with a whole bunch of people who I was in. And I'm working on the sequel, Had Bruce, with a much larger cast. But it was produced by Harvey Weinstein, who never laid a hand on me. Hashtag why not me? I was there with the bathrobe and I was ready. However, so I figured I'd write about people. I go on podcasts and I talk about these shows, and I realize that there's a lot of interest in that, and that that nobody's ever, kind of done one of those things like, yes, I was involved in all of this crap, and here I am. And here I am, a well-regarded winner of many Emmy Awards. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on. You're definitely one of my favorite interviews I've done to date. It was an absolute blast.
Yay.
Even talking to you through email was a lot of fun leading up to this.
Bruce, I'm done. You killed me. That last one killed me.
All right. Hey.
All
right.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that's gone.
If you don't mind sticking around for 1 minute, everybody that's listening and watching, have a great day.